Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. The dogs knew before he did. It was just after midnight on June 3rd, 2025, and somewhere between the towns of Condon and Seeley Lake, a landowner, whom we'll refer to as Jim, awoke to the furious barking of his dogs and a restless noise rising from his livestock pens. This was no ordinary stir. Something was out there, something big enough to disturb every animal on the property. Jim stepped outside, the cool night air wrapping around him like a wet sheet. A flashlight in one hand, a firearm in the other, he scanned the darkness. Montana nights were no stranger to wild visitors, especially here. Bears roamed freely, and everyone who lived in these parts knew it. Jim had read the stories. Just a couple of years earlier, a bear had wandered the streets of Kalispell in broad daylight, spotted near an elementary school. Wildlife officers had tracked it and relocated it, but it wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be the last. And there was that grim story from back in 2015, when an elderly woman in Kalispell was caught in her home by a bear she'd been feeding. That one had never been caught. In Montana, bears weren't just in the wild anymore. They were brushing the edges of towns, weaving through fences, drawn closer each year, and now one was here. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. This incident unfolded in Montana's Swan Valley, a corridor of deep forest and wild habitat that bridges the remote Bob Marshall wilderness with the more populated Flathead and Missoula valleys. The area around the town of Seeley Lake is known for its dense forests, alpine meadows, and a mix of vegetation such as subalpine fir, Douglas fir, and lodgepole pine. Thimbleberry, red osier dogwood, and serviceberry bushes line the slopes, providing seasonal forage. Large plant-eating mammals like mule deer, elk, and moose are common throughout the Swan Valley, while wolves, black bears, mountain lions, and grizzly bears are the area's top predators. Grizzly populations in western Montana are both denser and more widespread than they were even a decade ago. This expansion brings bears into closer proximity with livestock, pets, and rural homes, especially in the early summer when natural food sources may still be scarce. As Jim settled in to rest for the evening, well-deserved peace washed over him. He'd performed his chores and tasks, expending energy that might otherwise keep his eyes open with common life concerns. His farm dogs were also settling down as they embraced the cool, dark evening for a little shut-eye themselves. Jim's sleep was interrupted a few hours into the night. He could hear his dogs barking and growling, as well as his livestock raising a ruckus. This didn't happen often, but sometimes a coyote or a neighbor dog might wander through, winding everyone up. He decided he would go investigate, just to be sure it wasn't anything serious. Without thinking too much about it, Jim slipped on his shoes and grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen counter he'd put there for precisely this reason. Knowing he was in bear country, Jim also grabbed his trusty firearm. Even if he didn't use it to defend his own life or the lives of his animals, the gun was handy for firing warning shots to scare away anything that came near. As Jim slipped out the door and into the cool evening air, the moment came fast. As the flashlight beam revealed whatever it landed on, a pair of yellow glowing dots flickered in the light's edge. Jim immediately knew by the height and positioning of the eyes this was no neighbor dog or coyote. He held his firearm steady as he positioned the flashlight beam to focus on the grizzly. Now, for those of you wondering what brought the bear to Jim's farm, a brief discussion on attractants may help you understand the situation better. One of the most common attractants that can be found on a farm is the livestock feed. Anything containing grain or pelletized mixtures of it can be picked up on the breeze by the bear's sensitive nose from miles away. It is likely Jim's farm dogs were fed outside, so that may be a contributing factor in it too. Finally, just about everything a human does gives off an interesting scent to bears, including urine and feces, which contain high amounts of waste sodium, desired by bears. Living in the country also presents a difficulty in the disposal of trash. Combined, these attractants are difficult to control at times, and bears' noses are more than ready to point them toward a promising scent. As soon as the beam of light illuminated the grizzly's location, Jim let out a holler, trying to run it off. This is a tactic that usually gets any animal moving on that knows it shouldn't be so close to people, but this grizzly had a much more terrifying reaction. As Jim aimed his gun toward the bear, it spun to face him, honing in on the source of light and the location of his voice. This allowed the man to fire at the bear once it was clear the predator had no intention of stopping. The bear collapsed in the grass, its momentum halted before it could defend itself. Keeping the beam focused on the grizzly bear's carcass, Jim waited and watched for movement. He knew how hard it could be to kill a grizzly, and he wasn't about to give it a chance to turn him into a statistic. When dawn broke, the carcass of a grizzly bear lay on the property, and Jim called authorities so they could initiate an investigation. Wildlife officials arrived, confirmed the species of the bear, and classified the shooting as a defense-of-life incident. At first glance, they recognized the bear as a healthy male, but until the results of the necropsy are released, it isn't known if it was diseased or starving. They'd seen this kind of encounter before, more frequently now. Bear populations were growing, not just in number, but in range. Grizzlies that once kept to the high country now followed rivers and ridgelines into places where people lived. Sometimes they came for garbage, sometimes for chickens or compost, and sometimes, as in this case, for reasons no one could quite explain. Following the encounter, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks reiterated its Be Bear Aware safety guidelines in public notices, which include securing trash, removing bird feeders, and using electric fencing for livestock and compost. Officials emphasized the importance of bear spray and early detection strategies, especially in places where dogs or livestock may be vulnerable to conflict. As for the motives of the grizzly, it is clear that it was intent on raiding the feed or livestock of Jim's land. There was no mention of an animal carcass cached nearby, and it wasn't protecting cubs, given it was a male. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to photos, notes, and episodes. And the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Montana is host to several grizzly recovery zones, where approximately 1,000 grizzlies roam. This was the 6th documented grizzly bear to meet its end this year, including 2 of those incidents being a case of defensive life. Reports of incidents and sightings are increasing along the Montana-Idaho border, particularly in the Flathead Valley of Montana. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. What can landowners do to discourage bears from approaching their property, especially when livestock or dogs are present? Should bear spray be required equipment for anyone living in Montana's rural valleys? Do increasing defensive life shootings reflect a rising danger or a need for more widespread public education? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.